What's up guys, Sean here, and I'm finally back from Europe and I'm ready to make videos again. But before we get started, I do want to thank everybody who posted guest videos on this channel while I was away. It was difficult for me to produce content while I was overseas, and I really appreciate them actually contributing videos, putting in the time and effort to make videos so that I would have something to upload while I was gone. I also want to thank you guys, the audience, for supporting me throughout the time that I've been doing this channel. This is my primary source of income, and I would have never been able to afford to even go to Europe if not for you guys. I may make a video specifically on my travels, showing you some footage, some clips. If you guys are interested in seeing that, I did take a lot of video for you guys, so if you want to see that, then click the iCard, which is nya, or maybe it's nya. I'm not exactly sure where it is, and you guys can vote there and tell me if that's something that you're interested in. And I want to give an extra special thank you to DC, who sent me a very generous donation via PayPal that I received as I landed in Europe. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support that I've gotten doing this channel. And I want to send a special non-thank you to American Airlines for leaving me trapped in Philadelphia and refusing to comp me a rental car so that I could drive back to my home in New York. And a double special non-thank you to Avis Rental Car Company, who completely overcharged me despite offering me an alleged discount from American Airlines. And then on top of already being overcharged for renting a car, decided that it's a good policy to charge people the cash value for the tolls that they take on their way to their destination, even though all of their cars come with an Easy Pass, and charging somebody the cash value of the toll completely defeats the purpose of having an Easy Pass. And as if I wasn't feeling ripped off enough by that, they also decided to charge me a $3.50 fee just for using the Easy Pass. So I'm not saying you should never rent from Avis Rental Car Company, but what I am saying is that you should never rent from Avis Rental Car Company unless you absolutely have to, like I did. Now, with all of that being said, I am officially back on this channel, and what's a better way to come back than to talk about the Young Turks yet again lying to their audience about a conservative. Laura Ingraham is a conservative radio host, and I believe she also works for Fox News. And she was doing an interview related to the reparations argument that we've been having in this country ever since Elizabeth Warren was exposed as not being a Native American.
How long did you hold on to that? Because there was some report that said you were a Native American on your Texas bar license, and that you said you were a Native American on some documents when you were a professor at Harvard. Like, why'd you do that?
So it's what I believe. You know, that's, like I said, it's what I learned from my family.
You didn't get a discount in college? No.
You kind of like the original Rachel Dolezal.
Now, to be clear, that's not a joke. The reason we are talking about reparations in this country is because Elizabeth Warren, for decades, was lying about her Native American heritage. And then she finally took a DNA test, revealed that she's not even a little bit Native American. In fact, it came up that she was possibly 1,024th Native American, possibly that much Native American. And now, because she's guilty about lying and using those lies to get jobs at places like Harvard, we are talking about reparations because that was her out. Which leads us to the Young Turks, who are a lying media organization and huge supporters of Elizabeth Warren, who are now providing cover and defending the argument for reparations. But since reparations are ridiculous and really unpopular amongst the American people, they've decided that the best way to advocate for it is to call people who are against it racist and lie about them in order to do so. Which brings us to this clip where they claim that Laura Ingraham said that white people won, black people lost, therefore they should get over it, thus making Laura Ingraham the racist, thus making the case that only racists are against reparations, so you should support it because it's anti-racist. Because for many people, there's only one thing that's worse than supporting a nonsensical, not workable reparations program, and that is being called a racist by the left wing. So enter the propagandists known as the Young Turks and their video about how Laura Ingraham supposedly said, white people won, black people lost, and they just need to get over it.
Right-wingers like Laura Ingraham are up in arms about conversations and debates that are currently taking place in Congress about reparations for descendants of slaves. And during her radio show, she made these comments.
You get into this discussion when I say who's next about whether there is something unique about the African-American case. So what about Native Americans, for example? Would that be the next reparations fight? Obviously, both white and black soldiers, frankly, took this country from the Indians. The first people.
Yeah, well, yeah, people would argue that the whole world, and I would, that the whole world has been reshaped by people taking other people's land. I mean, it's called conquest. I mean, it's called, the Ottoman Empire had to shrink back. We had a totally different map throughout Europe and Asia. I mean, that's just the way the world is. I mean, they want to live in a fake world where, as Trump always says, you don't get do-overs. No do-overs. That's it. And it was there was an argument sometime, I think it was the 1980s. There was a quote, "You won, we lost, that's that."
So as most of you are probably a little bit smarter than the average Young Turks viewer, you might have noticed that the Young Turks didn't even bother to take Laura Ingraham out of context. They have clearly shifted from reparations for slavery to a talk about Native Americans and the supposed rights that people who descend from those who have been conquered have to make a reparations claim against people who supposedly descended from those who conquered them. Now, at first, I was going to give the Young Turks credit because I appreciate them not taking Laura Ingraham out of context, because that saves me the effort of going back, finding her show, clipping out what she actually said, and playing that against what the Young Turks showed. But then I realized that the reason they didn't bother to cut her out of context is because they think that their audience is so dumb that they can play her in full context, clearly not talking about slavery, and then pretend that she's an evil racist talking about slavery. Don't believe me? This is how they responded.
So if you're a descendant of a slave and your ancestors were not only enslaved, but lynched, treated horrifically, and by the way, that, in addition to Jim Crow laws, continue to negatively impact the wealth of Black Americans today. You don't get a do-over, according to Laura Ingraham.
Anna, she clearly didn't say or do what you're talking about. They had clearly moved on to Native Americans.
You get into this discussion when I say who's next about whether there is something unique about the African American case. So what about Native Americans, for example? Would that be the next reparations fight?
And talked about people being conquered by other people and said that that was the history of the world. In fact, while talking about Native Americans, they talked about how Black and white soldiers conquered Native American lands.
Fine. Obviously, both white and Black soldiers, frankly, took this country from the Indians, the first people.
Yeah, well,
So you're clearly drawing conclusions from that statement that you actually showed in full context that aren't there, because Laura Ingraham did not say that.
Yeah. Well, look, in the context of slavery, saying we won, you lost, that's
disgusting.
That. I mean, it's hard to be worse than that.
Yeah, it would be pretty bad if Laura Ingraham, in the context of talking about American slavery, said that we won, they lost, and they should just get over it. But she clearly didn't do that. The clips that you showed clearly that they moved on to what happens after African Americans get their reparations for slavery. Do we do reparations for Native Americans? Do all people who have been conquered deserve reparations from those who had conquered them? That's clearly in the clip that you showed, but you're pretending that it isn't in your banner, in your title, and in how you're talking about this.
Yeah. Well, look, in the context of slavery, saying we won, you lost, that's
disgusting.
I like how you can hear Anna in the background say, "It's disgusting," as Cenk delivers this false narrative about what Laura Ingraham said. Yes, the false narrative, the thing that you're making up and attributing to Laura Ingraham, is disgusting. But I would argue that if you're the one who's coming up with this, if you're the one who hears this, if you're the one that's thinking this, then perhaps you're more disgusting than the person that you're lying about.
That's what the conversation was about. It was about reparations.
This is also extra funny from Cenk. This was what the conversation was about. I totally assure you this is what it was about. I mean, we showed the clip in full context and you can clearly hear, if your ears work, or you can use the subtitle feature on YouTube, that this is not what the conversation was about. But don't believe your lying ears for Laura Ingraham. Don't listen to what she actually said. Listen to Cenk Uygur. He totally doesn't have an agenda about this. They totally don't hate right-wingers so much that they're willing to attribute racism to every one of them without any cause. Listen to me, because this is what it was about. I mean, they said what's next after the thing that we're talking about, but ignore all of that. This is what it's about, and Laura Ingraham, horrible, degenerate, evil racist, because the Young Turks told you so, and they told you specifically that this is what it was about. Now, the Young Turks goes on throughout the course of this video to talk about people who actually were paid reparations. They talk about how Native Americans received reparations from the federal government in certain contexts. But of course, what they fail to point out is that the Native Americans didn't receive reparations for losing their land to what then became the United States of America. What they actually received reparations for were violations of treaties that were agreed after the United States of America was an established country. Native Americans have never received reparations for harm inflicted upon their ancestors that nobody alive had anything to do with. Their tribe received reparations for violations of treaties, and individual Native Americans who were directly harmed occasionally would receive reparations for treaties like you would find in a civil suit. So it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison, and while normally I would be willing to attribute this to ignorance instead of the Young Turks directly lying to you, but the video starts out with the Young Turks directly lying to you, so I'm gonna go with that. Now, this video is really fun to watch because as it goes on, the negativity that they attribute to Laura Ingraham gets worse and worse.
Was what she did reasonable? No. Basically, like, who cares? We won.
In spite of the fact that she wasn't talking about African American slaves, and that she wasn't actually saying we won, you lost, even in the context that she was saying that. She was quoting somebody saying we won, you lost from the 1980s. It just gets worse and worse every time the Young Turks delivers it. So later in the video, Ana Kasparian characterizes what Laura Ingraham said as we won, you lost, haha, in your face.
And just real quick, going back to what Laura Ingraham said in that clip, I mean, she said essentially, we won, you lost, haha, right? And
Again, Laura Ingraham clearly, as we've established and shown in the clips actually shown by TYT, never said that. And then they drag out Cenk's nephew from the dungeon that is known as Facebook to bring us a fun fact about how white slave owners were compensated for their freed slaves.
That a lot of people often forget, it's not really a fun fact, is that we did offer reparations in the aftermath of the Civil War. We gave them to white slave owners. We compensated them for $300 per freed slave.
Now, Cenk's nephew brings this up as an uncomfortable truth about our history, but weirdly, he never brings up what happened to the slaves that were owned by black freedmen in America, because an uncomfortable truth in our history is that freed black people in America actually owned slaves in the United States of America. But don't talk about that. Just wear a shirt that says why, like, why am I even on this show? And just say your weird fact and then move on, go back into the shadows, and let everybody else talk about this. And by the way, if you're curious about the answer to why Cenk's nephew is on this panel, it is in fact because he is Cenk Uygur's nephew, the founder of the Young Turks. That's why he's there. Answer the question on your shirt, dude. You're welcome.
But Media Matters put together a video comparing Laura Ingraham to Richard Spencer, a very proud white nationalist. Take a look.
Now, finally, they wrap this up with the Media Matters mashup of what Richard Spencer said and what Laura Ingraham said. And they're basically implying that because Laura Ingraham, who was referencing somebody else, said something vaguely similar to Richard Spencer, even though when you give it a good listen, it's not even close, Laura Ingraham is therefore the equivalent of Richard Spencer, and the entire right wing, by proxy, is the equivalent of Richard Spencer.
The whole world has been reshaped by people taking other people's land. I mean, it's called conquest.
We conquered this continent.
I mean, as Trump always says, you don't get do-overs. No do-overs. That's it. And it was there was an argument sometime, I think it was 1980s. There was a quote, "You won, we lost, that's that."
Whether it's nice to say that or not, we won. And we got to define what America means. We got to define what this continent means.
Like around describing world politics. We won, you lost, that's that. That's just what it is.
America, at the end of the day, belongs to white men.
I have to say, it's really nice to know that even if I take some time off, go explore the old world, see sites throughout Spain, and go to Rome, that the Young Turks and the regressive left in this country will be exactly how they were when I left them. I'm not too familiar with Laura Ingraham, to be perfectly honest, but my ears work, and I can clearly hear when somebody is being taken wildly out of context for cynical purposes in order to promote an unpopular policy. So bravo to the Young Turks for once again failing miserably. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. If you want to see clips and videos from my vacation, let me know too. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social medias, support me on PayPal, Patreon, and Subscribestar. This has been me returning from the continent of Europe, returning from the nation of Spain and Rome to bring you another Young Turks video. Till next time.